Rain followed Elara beyond the eastern gates, like a punishment. By the time the towers of Silver Crown disappeared behind the black pines, the white hem of her wedding dress was brown with mud. She had torn away the jeweled overskirt before leaving the palace, but the thin silk beneath her cloak still clung uselessly to her legs. One hand gripped the reins of a stolen stable mare. The other never left her stomach. 12 weeks. 2 heartbeats. Darius still did not know. A sharp pull tore through the center of her chest. Elara gasped and nearly slid from the saddle. The fractured mate bond tightened again, invisible and vicious, as if something inside her ribs refused to accept the distance growing between them. Her wolf whimpered. Go back. The instinct was primitive, humiliating. Elara clenched her teeth. No. The word vanished beneath the rain. She saw Darius again in her mind. Bare skin. Mirelle's perfume. The sheets Elara herself had chosen for their wedding chambers. Then the great hall. Darius taking the Luna Ring meant for her and choosing her sister. The memory hardened something inside her. Elara forced the mare forward. She knew these roads better than most of the royal guard. For 4 years, she had redesigned supply routes, evacuation trails, and winter patrol rotations, while Darius received praise for the kingdom's efficiency. The irony almost made her laugh. His kingdom was helping her escape him. At the old cedar fork, Elara dismounted and slapped the mare toward the northern trail. The animal bolted. Trackers would follow the hoof prints. Elara went south on foot. She crossed a shallow creek twice, rubbed crushed pine and wet soil over her cloak, then climbed through a narrow ravine, avoided by mounted patrols. Another wave of bond pain struck. This one folded her in half. Her knees hit the mud. Nausea surged violently, and she turned aside, vomiting until nothing remained but bitter acid. Elara. Darius's voice did not truly sound behind her. Her damaged bond carried an echo of him anyway. She pressed both palms into the earth and waited until her vision cleared. She would not crawl back. Not because the bond hurt. Not because she was frightened. Not even for the children. Especially not for them. Elara reached beneath her cloak and pulled out a small healer charm from the leather pouch at her waist. Healer Nora had given it to her 2 weeks earlier, when the pregnancy was still a secret between them. She pressed the moonstone disc against her lower abdomen. For several terrifying seconds, there was nothing. Her breath stopped. Then, thump, a tiny pulse. Another followed beside it. Thump. Elara's mouth trembled. She covered it quickly, but the sound still escaped her. Not a sob. Something smaller, more broken. The rain hid the tears on her face as she bent over the charm. I'm here, she whispered. Mama's here. She allowed herself 10 seconds. Then she stood. Branches cracked somewhere behind her. Elara froze. Voices. Royal trackers. She crossed here. Alpha's orders are to bring her back unharmed. Elara's expression changed. Darius. Of course. He had discarded her before hundreds of witnesses and still believed he could decide where she went afterward. Elara slipped downhill into the ravine. She knew the tracker's procedure. 2 wolves would circle east. 1 would stay on the scent. The 4th would move ahead toward the neutral boundary. She had written that procedure, so she broke every assumption it depended on. Instead of running toward the border road, she climbed directly toward an abandoned watchtower and squeezed through a drainage tunnel, barely wide enough for her shoulders. Stones scraped her palms. Her abdomen cramped. She kept moving. Behind her, a wolf howled. They had found the false trail. Elara emerged on the far side as the clouds began to pale. The neutral boundary stood 50 yards ahead, a row of ancient stones, buried beneath moss. Her body shook with exhaustion. One more line. Once she crossed it before sunrise, royal retrieval law could no longer return a severed Luna without neutral arbitration. Elara staggered forward. 10 yards. 5. The bond suddenly pulled so hard she screamed. She fell across the boundary stone. For one breath, there was relief. Then warmth spread between her legs. Elara looked down. Red stained the pale fabric of her ruined wedding dress. And for the first time since leaving Darius, Elara was truly afraid she might lose something she could never replace. Rain swallowed Elara the moment she passed through the eastern gate. Within minutes, the white silk beneath her cloak was soaked through and streaked with mud. The jeweled overskirt had been abandoned in the royal wing. Her veil was gone. The only thing left from the wedding was a thin silver ribbon tangled around her wrist, wet and useless. She should have torn that off too. She did not. Not yet. One hand held the reins of a stable mare. The other remained pressed over her stomach. 12 weeks, 2 children. Darius still knew nothing. The first pull from the fractured mate bond struck without warning. Elara sucked in a sharp breath. Pain tightened around her ribs, then twisted deeper, dragging through her chest like a hooked wire. Her wolf recoiled inside her, confused by the growing distance from its mate. Go back. The instinct hit her so hard that her fingers locked around the reins. Elara closed her eyes. She saw Darius standing beside Mirelle in the great hall. She saw the Luna Ring resting in his hand. She heard him choose her sister. The mare shifted nervously beneath her. Elara opened her eyes. No. The word came out rough. She kicked the mare forward. The road curved into thick cedar forest, away from the palace towers. Elara had helped design these routes herself. Winter supply roads, patrol exchanges, emergency passages. Darius had signed every plan she placed in front of him. He had never once asked who had spent the nights calculating them. That knowledge was hers now. At the old cedar fork, Elara dismounted. She removed the mare's saddle, slapped the animal hard across the flank, and sent it racing north. Hoofprints immediately filled with rainwater. Any tracker arriving within the hour would assume she had continued toward the northern highway. Elara went south. On foot, she crossed a shallow creek, walked through the water for almost half a mile, then climbed toward a narrow ravine hidden beneath thorn bushes. Her boots slipped twice. The second fall sent a jolt through her abdomen. Elara froze. Her breath stopped. Nothing. Then a dull cramp. No. She pushed herself upright too quickly. Nausea surged. She stumbled toward a tree and vomited until her stomach was empty. One hand braced against wet bark while rain ran down the back of her neck. Another wave of bond pain followed. This one brought Darius with it. Not his body, his presence. A phantom pressure inside her skull. Elara. The mate bond carried emotion more easily when damaged. Confusion, anger, possession. He was looking for her. Elara wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Too late. Her voice shook anyway. She pulled a small moonstone healer charm from the leather pouch beneath her cloak. Healer Nora had given it to her after confirming the pregnancy. Elara had used it only twice. She pressed the disc carefully against her lower abdomen. At first, there was only rain. Elara stopped breathing. Then, thump. A faint heartbeat. Another followed beside it. Thump. Her knees weakened. She crouched against the tree, clutching the charm with both hands. 2 heartbeats. Still there. Her mouth trembled before she could stop it. I'm sorry. Dee gaped quietly. She had promised herself she would not cry for Darius. She wasn't. These tears were for the 2 children being carried through a freezing forest because their father had chosen another woman before knowing they existed. Elara bent forward until her forehead touched her hand. I'm here, she whispered. I won't leave you. A branch snapped somewhere uphill. Elara went still. Voices followed. Fresh scent. Southside. Royal trackers. Her grief vanished beneath instinct. Elara extinguished the healer charm and shoved it back beneath her cloak. Darius had sent men after her. Of course he had. He could publicly replace her, strip her future away, and still believe she belonged close enough for him to control. Elara moved deeper into the ravine. 4 trackers would follow royal retrieval formation. 1 on the scent, 2 circling, 1 moving ahead toward the border. She knew because she had written the protocol after rogues breached the Eastern Territory 2 winters earlier. She also knew its weakness. Royal trackers expected frightened fugitives to choose speed. Elara chose patience. She climbed halfway up the ravine wall and found the drainage tunnel she remembered from an old infrastructure map. The opening was barely wider than her shoulders. She entered sideways. Stone tore the skin from her palm. Mud coated her knees. Her stomach cramped again. She stopped. Not now. Behind her, a wolf howled. The trackers had reached the creek. Elara kept crawling. When she emerged from the far side of the tunnel, the eastern sky had begun to turn gray. 50 yards ahead stood the neutral boundary stones. Her legs nearly gave out from relief. Under royal retrieval law, once a severed Luna crossed neutral territory before sunrise, she could not be forcibly returned without arbitration. Elara staggered forward. 40 yards. 30. A growl sounded behind her. Closer now. She ran. Every step pulled against the mate bond. 20 yards. 10. The invisible tether tightened violently. Elara screamed. Pain ripped through her chest and abdomen at once. She fell forward across the moss-covered boundary stone. For half a second, the pressure vanished. No Darius. No royal pack. Nothing. Then warmth spread beneath her. Elara looked down. Dark red blood was soaking through the pale fabric between her legs. The color drained from her face. She pressed both hands over her stomach. No, stay with me. Behind her, the trackers stopped at the boundary. Ahead of her was neutral wilderness. Elara had escaped Darius, but as another cramp seized her body, freedom suddenly seemed worthless compared to the 2 tiny heartbeats she might be losing. She had crossed the border to save her children. Now she had no idea whether both of them would survive the night. Elara woke to the smell of bitter herbs and wood smoke. For several seconds, she did not know where she was. Then pain rolled low across her abdomen. Her hand flew to her stomach. No, don't move. The voice came from somewhere to her left. Elara turned her head. An older woman stood beside a narrow bed, gray hair twisted into a severe knot, sleeves rolled to her elbows. A copper basin sat on the floor. The water inside was pink. Blood. Elara's throat closed. My babies. One heartbeat is strong. The healer paused. Elara stared at her. And the other? The woman did not soften the answer. Weaker. Elara tried to sit up. Pain ripped through her lower body. She gasped. The healer pressed her back against the pillow. If you tear the bleeding open again, you may lose both. Elara stopped fighting. Her hands trembled against the blanket. Outside, rain struck the shutters in uneven bursts. Somewhere deeper in the small house, dried herbs crackled above a stove. How did I get here? A woodcutter found you near the neutral stones before sunrise. The healer lifted a clay cup. He thought you were dead. Elara drank when ordered. The liquid tasted of ironroot and willow bark. The healer studied her face. You're bonded. Elara said nothing. Recently severed, fractured. That explains the shock. The woman looked toward Elara's abdomen. A bonded pregnancy reacts badly when the mate tether is torn under stress. Elara's jaw tightened. I am not going back. I didn't ask you to. That answer made Elara look at her. The healer pulled a wooden stool closer. My name is Mara Quinn. This house belongs to no pack. Neither do I. Elara let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Mara placed 2 fingers against a moonstone disc, resting beside the bed. A pulse answered. Then another. Faint. Uneven. Elara's eyes filled immediately. Can you save them? I can help your body try. It was not the promise Elara wanted. It was the only honest one. For 3 days, Elara barely moved. Mara monitored the bleeding. She fed her broth, forced her to drink water, and checked both heartbeats every few hours. The weaker twin frightened them twice. Each time, the second pulse returned. On the 4th morning, Mara finally nodded. Both are holding. Elara turned her face toward the window. A tear slipped into her hair. She did not wipe it away. That afternoon, she burned the last document connecting her to Silver Crown. Not her medical records, not the severance decree, only the travel papers bearing her royal title. Lady Elara Vale ceased to exist beyond that room. For neutral records, she became simply Elara Vale, unattached, no pack listed. Mara watched the paper curl in the stove. You'll need money. I have some. Not enough for 2 babies. Elara almost smiled. That sounded dangerously like judgment. It was arithmetic. The answer was so dry that Elara laughed once. It hurt, but it was the first sound she had made in days that did not come from pain. When she was strong enough to stand, Elara refused charity. She repaired Mara's patient ledgers first. Then she reorganized the healer's supply contracts. Within a month, she had identified 3 merchants, overcharging neutral clinics, and 2 border packs, violating sanctuary tariffs. Mara stared at the corrected accounts. What exactly did you do before you appeared half dead on my doorstep? Paperwork. Mara raised an eyebrow. Elara kept writing. Word traveled. A widow came asking for help with a land dispute. Then a trader with a confiscated wagon. Then 3 displaced wolves whose former alpha had claimed their children as pack property. Elara read every document. She found loopholes. She found old clauses. She found ways to keep families together. By the 7th month of her pregnancy, people were leaving food outside Mara's door in payment. By the 9th, Elara had stopped worrying about whether she could afford blankets. Labor began during a winter storm. It lasted 14 hours. There was no throne room, no royal healer team, no alpha waiting beyond the door. Only Mara, a basin of hot water, and Elara gripping the edge of a wooden bed until her knuckles bled. The first cry belonged to a boy. Strong, angry, alive. Elara laughed and sobbed at the same time. Jal, Mara barely had time to wrap him before the second child came. A girl, smaller, quiet for one terrible second. Then she screamed. Elara collapsed back against the pillow. Lyra, Mara placed both babies against her chest. 2 warm bodies, 2 tiny mouths, searching for comfort. Elara kissed Kale's damp hair, then Lyra's forehead. She looked toward the empty chair beside the bed. Just once. Then, never again. 3 years after the wedding night, Greyhaven knew Elara not as a discarded royal bride, but as the woman people sought when pack law failed them. Kale was fearless. Lyra watched everything, and neither child knew the name Darius Blackthorn. One evening, while Elara reviewed an ancient sanctuary dispute, Lyra climbed into her lap and reached for the moonstone pendant hanging at her mother's throat. The stone flashed silver. Elara froze. A symbol appeared across its surface. She had seen it before, on the parchment beneath her hand. Elara slowly lowered her eyes to Lyra's shoulder. Beneath the child's skin, the same silver mark began to glow. Whatever Elara had escaped 3 years ago had just found its way back through her daughter. Greyhaven did not care that Elara had once been promised a crown. That was one of the reasons she stayed. The territory sat between 3 rival pack roads and a human trade corridor, which meant everyone wanted something from it, and no one could afford to own it outright. The settlement smelled of wet timber, bread ovens, horse sweat, and ink from the legal hall, where Elara now spent most of her mornings. Kale slept beneath her desk, with one fist wrapped around a wooden wolf. Lyra sat beside the window, quietly sorting polished stones by color. Across from Elara, a widow named Ruth Mercer clutched a folded eviction order. "They gave me 3 days," Ruth said. "My husband died defending their border. Now his brother says the land returns to the Alpha family, because I have no adult son." Elara read the document twice, then a third time. The signature belonged to a minor Alpha house allied with Greyhaven. The law looked solid. Almost. Elara turned the parchment over. "Did your husband plant the eastern orchard?" Ruth blinked. "Yes." "With his own money?" "Yes." "Before or after your mating oath?" "After." Elara reached for an older volume. "Then they made a mistake." "Huh." Ruth stared at her. Elara opened the book to a forgotten clause in the Neutral Holdings Act. Any cultivated land, created through shared marital labor transfers, to the surviving mate, not the blood family. Ruth's mouth fell open. "They won't accept that. They don't have to like it." Elara dipped her pen in ink. "They only have to obey it." By noon, the eviction order had been suspended. Ruth left crying into both hands. Elara watched her go, then looked down when Kale crawled from under the desk. "Did you win?" "I found the rule." "So you won." Elara almost smiled. "Eat your apple." An hour later, Greyhaven's warning bell rang. Not the war bell. Supply alarm. Elara stood before anyone entered the room. Outside, carts were already turning toward the western road. Men shouted across the square. A rider dismounted hard enough to nearly fall. Medicine convoy was hit near Black Ash Pass. Elara stepped into the courtyard. "How many wagons?" The rider looked at her, confused. 6. "What did they take?" "Nothing." That stopped her. They burned 2 carts and scattered the rest. Several guards began shouting orders to reinforce the pass. Elara looked west, then north. The winter stores. She knew the route. "Don't send everyone to Black Ash." A guard frowned. "Lady, with respect, they don't want the medicine." The courtyard quieted. Elara pointed toward the map board beside the stable. "Black Ash is the obvious road. If they wanted supplies, they'd steal them. Burning 2 wagons means they want Greyhaven looking west." The rider swallowed. "Then where?" Elara traced the northern ridge with one finger. "Coldwater Bridge." A deep voice came from behind her. "That bridge leads nowhere worth taking." Elara turned. The man approaching wore no ceremonial coat, only dark riding leathers and a weather-stained cloak. He was tall, broad through the shoulders, with a scar running from the edge of his jaw toward his collar. The guards straightened immediately. Alpha, Adrian Thorne. Elara had seen him before from a distance. He had never spoken to her. Until now. She met his gaze. It leads to the winter medicine depot. Adrian's expression did not change. Which is underground, and accessed through one reinforced gate. Yes, meaning Greyhaven assumes it is secure. Adrian studied her. Elara continued. If I wanted to cripple this territory without starting a war, I would set fire to wagons in the west, pull your fighters away, then hit the depot before the first freeze. A beta stepped forward. That's speculation. Elara looked at him. So is assuming your enemy is stupid. Adrian's mouth twitched once. Not quite a smile. He turned to the riders. 20 to Black Ash, 40 to Coldwater. The beta hesitated. Alpha. Now. They moved. Elara returned to the legal hall. She did not see the ambush. She heard about it 3 hours later. 40 Greyhaven fighters intercepted 12 armed wolves beneath Coldwater Bridge before they reached the medicine depot. No stores were lost. No civilians died. By sunset, Adrian Thorne was standing inside Elara's office. Kale had fallen asleep again. Lyra watched Adrian from behind her mother's chair. Adrian placed a mud-streaked map on the desk. You knew where they would strike. I guessed. No. His gaze shifted to the colored route markings. You calculated. Elara said nothing. Adrian pulled out the chair across from her but did not sit. Greyhaven officers trained for years to read territory movement. You saw the attack from one burned convoy. I noticed patterns. And royal supply formations. The room seemed to narrow. Elara's fingers rested beside the moonstone pendant. Adrian's voice remained calm. You knew how attackers would manipulate our patrol response. You knew the depot weakness. And last month you quoted a Silver Crown military statute, from memory. Lyra reached up and took Elara's hand. Elara squeezed it gently. I worked around pack administration. Adrian glanced at the children, then back at her. That's a careful answer. It is the one I'm giving you. He finally sat. There was no anger in his face. That made him harder to read. I don't care who you ran from, Elara. Her stomach tightened. But if your past can bring soldiers into my territory, then it becomes my concern. Outside, evening bells rang over Greyhaven. Elara held his gaze. For 3 years, survival had depended on no one asking the right question. Adrian Thorne had just asked it. He leaned forward slightly. Who exactly were you before you came to Greyhaven, huh? Adrian did not press her again that night. That unsettled Elara more than anger would have. For 2 days, Greyhaven returned to its rhythm. The medicine depot was reinforced. Patrol routes changed. Ruth Mercer kept her orchard. Kale developed an obsession with wooden training swords. Lyra continued touching the moonstone pendant whenever she thought Elara was not looking. Then Adrian sent for her, not to his private chambers, to the war room. Elara entered with a stack of legal files under one arm and found 8 officers around a long oak table. Mud dried on their boots. A regional map covered the center beneath iron weights. Every face turned toward her. One beta folded his arms. This is the advisor? Elara placed her files down. I was told there was a supply problem. The beta gave Adrian a look that bordered on insult. There is a military problem. Adrian leaned against the far edge of the table. Same problem this week. Elara looked at the map. 3 villages near Greyhaven's southern border had reported missing grain carts. No bodies, no stolen horses, just empty wagons, abandoned beside the road. She traced the markings. When did the first cart disappear? 6 days ago, one officer said. And the second? 4. The third? Yesterday. Elara studied the distances. The beta nearest her exhaled impatiently. We know where they're striking. We need fighters, not arithmetic. Elara looked up. Then why haven't your fighters caught anyone? His jaw tightened. Adrian said nothing. That told her enough. This was a test, not humiliation. A test. Elara looked back down. They're not stealing grain. The same beta gave a humorless laugh. The empty wagons would disagree. They're measuring your response time. The room quieted. Elara pointed toward the first attack. You sent 12 wolves here. Then the second. 18 here. Her finger moved to the third. 32. An officer frowned. They escalated. No, you did. Elara reached for charcoal and drew a line along the southern ridge. Every attack pulls more patrols away from this corridor. Adrian stepped closer. The old quarry road. Yes, there is nothing there. There wasn't. Elara looked toward a faded trademark beside the ridge. But the spring floods destroyed the eastern pass. Every winter caravan from Hollow Creek now uses the quarry road for 6 weeks. One officer cursed softly. Medicine, salt, preserved meat. Enough supplies to support a small army. Adrian's eyes sharpened. When does the first caravan arrive? Elara looked at the route dates. Tomorrow before dawn. The impatient Beta straightened. We should reinforce the quarry. No. He stared at her. Elara continued. If you move troops tonight, whoever is watching your patrols will know you've seen the pattern. So, we do nothing. We make them think nothing changed. She marked 2 wooded slopes above the road. Hide fighters here and here. No uniforms. No pack insignia. Let the caravan enter the gorge. Adrian's gaze stayed on her. And when the raiders move, close both ends. The Beta shook his head. You're gambling civilians. Elara's expression hardened. No, I'm removing them. She tapped the caravan symbol. Send empty wagons dressed exactly like the originals. Move the real supplies through Greyhaven before midnight. Silence. Adrian finally asked. How many fighters? Fewer than you want. A corner of his mouth moved. Why? Because soldiers get bored when they wait. Bored soldiers talk. Talking soldiers ruin ambushes. One of the older officers gave a short laugh. The hostile Beta did not. Adrian nodded. Do it. At dawn, 15 raiders entered the quarry road expecting 6 loaded wagons. They found empty carts. Then Greyhaven fighters sealed both exits. Not one civilian was caught in the fighting. By breakfast, 12 raiders were in custody, and 3 had fled into the hills. Elara was pouring porridge for Kale when Adrian arrived at Mara's old kitchen door. Kale looked at the Alpha's boots. Did Mama win again? Elara closed her eyes briefly. Adrian looked at the boy. Your mother doesn't seem to like that word. Kale considered this. She wins a lot for someone who doesn't like it. Adrian laughed. A real one this time. Elara handed Kale his spoon. Eat. Adrian placed a folded parchment on the table. Elara did not touch it. What is that? Oathkeeper appointment. She looked at him. Adrian pulled out a chair. Official authority over neutral disputes, sanctuary petitions, and trade law conflicts inside Greyhaven. You barely trust me. I trust results. His eyes moved toward Kale, then Lyra, who was sitting on the floor with the moonstone pendant between her fingers. And I trust that whatever you ran from, you haven't used Greyhaven against us. Elara's shoulders eased slightly. Why give me sanctuary authority? Because people already come to you when my officers fail them. There was no resentment in his voice. That surprised her. Most Alphas disliked power they had not personally granted. Adrian seemed more interested in whether it worked. He slid the parchment closer. And because I watched you prevent 2 fights this week without spilling blood. Elara read the seal. Greyhaven Oathkeeper. Her name, no royal title, no reference to Darius. Just Elara Vale. She signed. Adrian stood. At the door, he paused. One more thing. Elara looked up. A scout returned from the north. Her hand stopped beside the ink bottle. Silver Crown has sent requests through 3 neutral territories. They're looking for someone versed in ancient Luna law. Elara kept her face still. Why? Adrian's expression darkened. Something is wrong with their Luna. Far away, inside the royal palace, Mirelle stood alone before a mirror. Her breathing came fast. She peeled the silk glove from her right hand. Black veins crawled beneath her skin. They had passed her wrist. The Luna Ring would not move. She pulled harder. Pain shot through her finger. Mirelle bit back a scream. Then the moonstone set in the ring turned completely black. And for the first time, Mirelle understood that the crown she had stolen might be the thing slowly killing her. The archive beneath Greyhaven's old courthouse smelled of dust, wax, and wet stone. Elara had spent 3 nights there. Adrian had given her access after the report from Silver Crown arrived, but he had not asked her to explain why the words ancient Luna law had made her go pale. For that, she was grateful. Tonight, Kale slept upstairs with Mara. Lyra sat beside Elara on a thick folded blanket, stacking wooden seals while her mother compared 2 brittle legal volumes. The symbol on the moonstone pendant appeared again, a crescent split by 3 vertical lines. Elara traced it with one finger. There, the same mark was pressed into the margin of a parchment dated nearly 600 years earlier. First Luna Accord. Her pulse quickened. She read slowly. The original Luna line had not been created by royal marriage. It existed before the Blackthorn dynasty, before the council, before the current laws governing coronation. Elara turned another page. A clause had been crossed out in darker ink, likely centuries later. She held the parchment toward the candle. The original words remained visible beneath. A First Luna heir may recognize, suspend, or deny the legitimacy of any Luna claimant whose oath was obtained through deception. Elara stopped breathing. Behind her, Lyra dropped a wooden seal. It rolled across the floor. "Mama." Elara turned. Lyra was rubbing her shoulder. "What hurts?" "Hot." Elara moved quickly and pulled the child's loose nightshirt aside. The silver mark beneath Lyra's skin was glowing, not faintly, bright enough to reflect against Elara's fingertips. The first Luna symbol. Elara stared from her daughter to the parchment. The room seemed suddenly too small. "No." Lyra frowned. "Mama mad." Elara immediately softened. "No, sweetheart." She gathered Lyra into her arms. "Never at you." A door opened above them. Footsteps came down the stone stairs. Adrian appeared, carrying a lantern. He stopped when he saw Elara holding Lyra. "What happened?" "Nothing." His gaze moved to the glowing mark. "That doesn't look like nothing." Elara hesitated. 3 years of survival had taught her to guard every truth. But Adrian had given her sanctuary, without demanding ownership of her past. She turned the parchment toward him. "First Luna bloodline." He read the title, then looked at Lyra again. "You're saying she carries it?" "Yes." Adrian's expression shifted. Not greed, not awe, concern. "Does Silver Crown know?" "No." "Good." Elara almost laughed from relief. He had not said they must tell the crown. He had said good. Before she could answer, a crash sounded from upstairs. Cale cried out. Elara was already moving. She reached the kitchen and found him beside the hearth, one hand bleeding. A ceramic bowl lay shattered at his feet. Mara crouched beside him. He tried to move it himself. "I was helping," Cale said through tears. "You were bleeding," Lyra announced. Cale glared at her. Elara knelt. "Let me see." The cut was shallow. Mara cleaned it, then pressed a small healer stone against his palm. Cale flinched. A gold line flashed beneath the skin, near his collarbone. Mara froze. Adrian saw it too. Elara's stomach dropped. "Again," she said. Mara passed the stone over him. The gold mark appeared fully this time. A crowned wolf surrounded by 4 points. Adrian's face hardened. Royal Alpha mark. Elara already knew. She had seen the symbol carved above Darius's private council chamber. Only direct Blackthorn heirs carried it. Cale stared at the adults. "Did I do something bad?" Elara took his face between her hands. "No." Her voice nearly broke. "You did nothing wrong. 2 children, 2 marks. 1 ancient, 1 royal." Mara looked between them. "I have never heard of twins carrying separate bloodline claims." Elara stood slowly. Neither had she. She returned to the archive after the children were settled and searched until her eyes burned. Just before dawn, she found the answer in a sealed appendix. Twins born from a royal Alpha father and First Luna mother could divide the ancient inheritance. One would carry crown blood, the other would carry Luna judgment. Together, they could either stabilize a dynasty or end its legitimacy. Elara lowered herself into the chair. The danger became clear all at once. If Darius learned about Cale, the crown could claim him as royal property. If the council learned what Lyra was, they could decide she was too dangerous to live. Adrian stood across from her. "What do you need?" Elara looked up. "Not what are you hiding, not what can I gain. What do you need?" Her answer came immediately. "Time." He nodded. "You have it." Elara closed the ancient volume. Outside, the first morning bell rang. She stared at the first Luna clause one final time. If Mirelle remained on the throne under a false oath, Lyra would not merely expose her. She could legally destroy the claim. And if Mirelle ever discovered that fact, the child sleeping safely upstairs would become a target. Elara had spent 3 years hiding her children from a king. Now she understood she might have to hide one of them from an entire kingdom. The oldest archive in Greyhaven sat beneath the courthouse, 3 flights below street level. It smelled of wax, damp stone, and paper that had survived too many winters. Elara had spent 4 nights there. The report from Silver Crown about Luna instability had forced her back into records she had spent 3 years avoiding. If Mirelle's condition was connected to the Luna Ring, then Lyra's mark could not be ignored any longer. Tonight, Kale slept upstairs with Mara. Lyra sat beside Elara on a folded blanket, arranging wooden seals into uneven rows. Elara opened another brittle volume. Nothing. She rubbed her eyes. Then Lyra reached toward the moonstone pendant hanging from Elara's neck. The stone flashed. Elara froze. A silver symbol appeared across its surface. A crescent divided by 3 narrow lines. The same symbol had appeared beneath Lyra's skin. Elara turned toward the parchment in front of her. There it was again, pressed faintly into the lower corner. First, Luna Accord. Her pulse quickened. She carefully unfolded the document. The language was old, but she understood enough. The first Luna bloodline had existed before the Blackthorn monarchy, before the modern council, before Alpha Kings claimed the right to choose who could stand beside them. Elara read farther. 1 sentence had been scratched through centuries ago. She angled the parchment toward the candle. The original wording remained visible beneath the ink. A first Luna heir may recognize, suspend, or deny the authority of a Luna whose oath was secured through deception. Elara stared at the line. Mama? She turned. Lyra was rubbing her shoulder. What's wrong? Hot. Elara crossed the room immediately. She pulled the collar of Lyra's nightshirt aside. The silver mark beneath the child's skin was glowing. Bright. Alive. Elara's breath caught. It matched the parchment perfectly. No. Lyra's face crumpled. Mama angry? Elara gathered her against her chest. No, sweetheart. Never. Footsteps sounded on the stairs. Adrian descended carrying a lantern. He stopped halfway when he saw Elara holding Lyra. What happened? Nothing. His eyes dropped to the glowing mark. That looks very much like something. Elara almost told him to leave. 3 years ago, secrecy had kept her children alive. Trust still felt dangerous. But Adrian had never demanded her past in exchange for sanctuary. She turned the parchment around. First Luna bloodline. He read the heading, then looked at Lyra. You think she carries it? I know she does. Adrian's expression tightened. Does Silver Crown? No. Keep it that way. Elara looked at him sharply. He did not look impressed by Lyra's power. He looked worried about her safety. Before Elara could respond, something shattered upstairs. Kale cried out. She ran. They found him in Mara's kitchen beside a broken ceramic bowl. Blood streaked his palm. I was helping, Kale said immediately. Mara crouched beside him. You were climbing. I was helping while climbing. Despite everything, Elara almost laughed. She knelt. Let me see. The cut was shallow. Mara cleaned it and pressed a healer stone against his hand. Kale winced. A flash of gold moved beneath the skin near his collarbone. Mara stopped. Adrian stepped closer. Elara's stomach turned cold. Again, Mara passed the stone over him. This time, the mark appeared fully. A crowned wolf surrounded by 4 gold points. Adrian exhaled slowly. Royal Alpha mark. Elara had seen it many times. Above Darius's council chamber. Stamped into inheritance law. Carved into the Blackthorn throne. Only direct heirs carried it. Kale looked between the adults. Am I in trouble? Elara cupped his face. No. Her voice softened. You haven't done anything wrong. Lyra climbed beside him. My mark is prettier. Kale frowned. Mine has a wolf. Mine glows. Enough, Elara murmured. But Mara was no longer watching the children. She was watching Elara. One twin carries the royal line, and the other carries something older, Adrian said. Elara returned to the archive after both children were asleep. She searched until dawn threatened the narrow windows above. Finally, in a sealed appendix, she found a reference to twin inheritance. Children born from a royal alpha father and a first Luna mother could divide the old bloodline. One child carried crown authority. The other carried Luna judgment. Together they could strengthen a royal dynasty or strip it of legitimacy. Elara sat very still. Kale could be claimed by Silver Crown as an heir if Darius discovered him. Lyra was worse. If the council learned what she was, they would understand immediately what Mirelle's position meant. A false Luna could be exposed by Lyra's blood, possibly removed, possibly condemned. Adrian stood across the table. What do you need? Elara looked up. Not an explanation, not allegiance, not access to her children. What do you need? She closed the document. Time. Adrian nodded once. You have it. Elara looked toward the ceiling, where Kale and Lyra slept safely for now. 3 years ago, she had hidden her pregnancy from one king. Now she understood the danger was larger. If Mirelle discovered Lyra could destroy her claim to the Luna title, desperation would make her dangerous. Elara had spent 3 years protecting her children from the past. Now the past had finally given one of them the power to threaten a kingdom. The first sign that Silver Crown was failing came from the wolves. Not the soldiers, not the council, the wolves. During the morning oath in the Great Hall, 3 pack representatives lowered their heads when Darius entered. But they did not kneel. The royal call should have pressed through every bonded wolf in the room like thunder. Instead, it flickered, weak, uncertain. Darius stopped halfway to the throne. Again, the herald struck the staff against the floor. Honor the Alpha King. 2 wolves knelt. The rest hesitated. Darius's jaw tightened. Across the hall, Mirelle sat in the Luna chair, with her right hand hidden beneath a black glove. Her face remained calm, too calm. The Luna Ring had not been removed in weeks. No healer could explain the dark veins spreading beneath her skin. The council blamed stress. Darius blamed everyone. Harvest agreements had failed in the eastern packs. 2 trade houses refused to renew grain contracts. A border alpha had ignored a royal summons for the first time in 14 years. The kingdom was not collapsing. Not yet. But the seams were showing. Darius left the Great Hall without speaking. In the council chamber, ledgers waited in uneven stacks. Mirelle entered behind him. You embarrassed them. He looked up. They embarrassed the crown. They are frightened. They should be. Mirelle removed her glove halfway, saw his gaze, then pulled it back on. Darius noticed. He had been noticing more lately. What he had ignored 3 years ago now irritated him with surgical precision. Mirelle did not know which treaties fed the western packs. She could not read winter ration projections. She had signed a border tax revision last month without realizing it violated a neutral zone agreement. Elara would have caught it before breakfast. The thought came unwanted. Darius pushed it away. Again, he had spent 3 years doing that. Elara's handwriting still appeared in old trade books. Her route notes remained in military archives. Half the systems keeping Silver Crown alive carried decisions she had made quietly, while he wore the crown and accepted the praise. He had once thought competence was something easily replaced. He had been wrong about that. A knock came at the door. Healer Nora Whitmore entered, carrying a sealed ledger. Darius frowned. You requested an audience? Nora bowed. My king, I found something in the old medical registry. Mirelle went very still. Darius noticed that too. What? Nora looked at Mirelle, then back at him. It concerns Lady Elara. The room changed. Darius did not move. Speak. Nora placed the ledger on the table. I was reviewing archived maternal records because of Luna Mirelle's condition. Mirelle's face tightened. This has nothing to do with me. Nora ignored her. 3 years ago, before the wedding ceremony, I treated Elara privately. Darius's eyes hardened. For what? Nora opened the ledger. The page had faded around the edges. The entry had not. Elara Vale. Pregnancy confirmed. 12 weeks. Twin gestation. For several seconds, Darius did not understand what he was reading. Then he understood all at once. His hand flattened against the table. No. Nora's voice was quiet. I confirmed 2 heartbeats. Darius stared at the date. Wedding morning. His breath stopped. He counted backward once. Then again. 3 months. Elara had been carrying his children when she walked into the royal wing. She had been carrying them when she found him with Mirelle. She had been carrying them when he stood before the Great Hall and chose another Luna. Something inside his chest gave way. Not loudly. No roar. No shattered furniture. Just a sickening drop. He remembered Elara's hand resting over her stomach during the ceremony. He had thought she was steadying herself. She had been protecting them. Why wasn't I told? Nora looked at him carefully. She intended to tell you that night. Mirelle stepped forward. That proves nothing. Elara could have. Stop. Darius's voice was low. Mirelle stopped. Nora reached into the ledger and removed a receipt slip. 1 copy of the sealed medical report was signed out before the ceremony. Darius looked at the name, Mirelle Vale. The room became very quiet. Mirelle's face drained of color. Darius raised his eyes slowly. How long? She shook her head. Darius, listen. How long did you know? It wasn't what you think. His wolf surged beneath his skin. The old power that had failed in the great hall suddenly returned in one violent pulse. The windows rattled. Nora stepped back. Mirelle did too. Darius picked up the receipt and held it between two fingers. His voice broke at the edges now. Not from rage, from something worse. You knew she was carrying my children. Mirelle said nothing. That silence answered him. Darius looked again at the medical entry. Twin gestation. 12 weeks. 3 years of absence suddenly took on a different shape. Not one life lost. 3. And for the first time, the failing kingdom did not frighten him nearly as much as the possibility that somewhere beyond Silver Crown, 2 children existed who had never known his name. Darius placed the medical file in front of Mirelle and asked, "How long did you know my children existed?" Mirelle did not answer. That was what broke the room. Darius stood behind the council table with the medical ledger open beneath one hand and Mirelle's receipt beneath the other. The ink was old. The date was not. Wedding morning. 12 weeks. Twins. Mirelle's signature. How long? He asked again. Her gloved fingers curled at her sides. Darius, how long did you know? Nora remained near the door, silent now. Even she seemed to understand that whatever came next would not belong to medicine. Mirelle lifted her chin. I found the report that morning. Darius stared at her. You knew, before you came to my chambers. A flicker crossed her face. Yuse. His wolf surged beneath his skin. The lamps trembled. Mirelle flinched but did not retreat. You need to understand what was happening. I understand enough. No, you don't. She tore off the black glove. The veins beneath her skin had spread almost to her elbow. The Luna Ring sat dark and swollen against her finger. The council told me Elara's bloodline was unstable. They said if she carried heirs, the entire succession could fracture. Darius's Yav hardened. And you believed them. I believed what I wanted to believe. The honesty landed harder than another lie. Mirelle's voice cracked. All my life, she was the legitimate daughter. The one introduced first. The one invited to every council dinner. The one our father trusted, with his name. Darius said nothing. Mirelle laughed once, bitterly. I was always the other daughter. So you took her husband. I took the only thing I thought could make me impossible to ignore. The words sat between them. Darius looked at the ring. And the report? I hid it. Nora closed her eyes. Mirelle continued before Darius could speak. The council gave me another file. A bloodline assessment. They said Elara's maternal line made her unfit to carry a stable royal heir. Darius looked toward Nora. Was that file real? No, Nora said. One word. Enough. Darius's face went still. Later that afternoon, the original bloodline registry arrived from the restricted archive. Not because Darius requested it, because Nora did. The parchment was older than the false report Mirelle had used. Its seal belonged to the pre-council registry. Elara's paternal line was ordinary, noble, alpha blood. Her maternal line was not. Darius read the name twice. House Asterwin. His eyes shifted toward Elder Marcus Vane. Marcus stood at the far end of the chamber, surrounded by 2 royal guards. You knew. Marcus did not deny it. House Asterwin was believed extinct. That was not my question. Marcus looked toward Mirelle's blackened hand, then at the medical ledger. The first Luna bloodline predates the Blackthorn crown. Darius's fingers tightened around the parchment. And, if Elara had been crowned while carrying heirs, the first Luna Accord could have been revived. Nora's expression sharpened. What would that have changed? Marcus gave her a tired look. Everything. He turned back to Darius. The council would lose veto authority over succession. Royal treaties involving heirs would require Luna consent. Pack seizures could be overturned under sanctuary law. 1. Darius understood. You wanted her gone. We wanted stability. Darius stepped around the table. Marcus did not move. You forged a bloodline report. Yes. You used Mirelle. Yes. You hid my children from me. Marcus's expression finally hardened. We did not force you into her bed. The room went still. Darius stopped. Marcus continued. We created the conditions. You made the choice. Mirelle looked away. Darius's face drained of color. For 3 years, he had told himself that pressure had cornered him, that the council had manipulated him, that Mirelle had preyed on his weakness. But Marcus had just stripped away the last excuse. They had forged papers. They had fed his pride. They had offered him an easier woman. None of them had made him betray Elara. Nora spoke quietly. Elara came to me that morning because she was happy. Darius closed his eyes. Nora did not spare him. She asked me whether twin pregnancies were common in royal bloodlines. She wanted to surprise you after the ceremony. Mirelle pressed a hand over her mouth. Darius turned toward her. You knew that too. Yes, and you still. I wanted the crown. Her voice broke. I thought once I had it, I would finally matter. Darius looked at the black Luna ring biting into her finger. And did you? Mirelle stared at him. Then she said the thing that destroyed whatever remained between them. I wanted your crown, Darius. I never wanted your ruin. Not him. The crown. The position. The proof that she had finally surpassed Elara. Darius looked toward the window. Beyond the glass stood the kingdom he had believed would justify every compromise. It was failing. His Luna had never truly been accepted. His council had lied. His children were gone. And the woman he betrayed had been carrying the only bloodline strong enough to stabilize the crown. A guard entered at a run. My king. Darius turned. The man held a sealed, neutral territory registry. A match was found. Darius took it. Greyhaven Sanctuary. Elara Vale. 2 dependents. Kyle Vale. Lyra Vale. His hands began to shake. Mirelle whispered, Darius, don't. He ignored her. He looked at the ages. 2 years. 3 months. The room tilted. His children. Alive. He raised his head toward the captain of the Royal Guard. Prepare the Eastern Unit. Nora stepped forward. What are you doing? Darius folded the registry. His voice had returned to command, but something desperate lived underneath it now. I'm bringing my children home. And 300 miles away, Elara had no idea the man she escaped was finally riding toward the 2 lives she had spent 3 years protecting from him. The Great Hall of Silver Crown had not changed. Elara had. 3 years earlier, she had crossed this floor in a wedding dress with 2 children hidden beneath her heart and humiliation burning behind her eyes. Now she entered wearing a dark blue Oathkeeper coat, the silver seal of Greyhaven at her throat. Adrian walked beside her, not ahead, not as her shield, beside her. Behind them, 2 Greyhaven guards escorted healer Nora and carried sealed evidence cases. Darius stood near the throne. For 1 second, his face lost every trace of command. His eyes went to Elara first, then past her, searching. Where are they? Elara stopped at the center of the hall. Safe. His jaw tightened. They are my children. They are not property. Several council members shifted. Darius stepped down 1 stair. I came to Greyhaven under royal heir law, and I challenged your claim under neutral sanctuary law. Elara held up a folded decree. That is why we are here instead of allowing your soldiers to drag 2 toddlers across a border. Adrian's gaze flicked toward Darius. No growl, no threat. His silence carried enough. Elder Marcus stood under guard at the council bench. Mirelle sat nearby, pale, the blackened Luna ring still trapped on her finger. Elara looked at her sister. Mirelle looked away. The hearing began. Healer Nora testified first. She placed the original medical registry on the stone table. Elara Vale was 12 weeks pregnant, with twins, on the morning of the royal wedding. A murmur moved through the hall. Nora continued. A sealed copy was signed out by Mirelle Vale before the ceremony. The receipt followed. Mirelle's signature. Darius did not look at her. He stared at Elara. Elara felt nothing soften. Next came the forged bloodline report. Then the original. House Asterwin. First Luna descent. Marcus was forced to confirm the council had altered the document to prevent Elara's coronation. An alpha from the Western Pact stood. You falsified succession law? Marcus answered quietly. Yes. Another alpha slammed a fist against the bench and allowed a false Luna to sit beside the crown for 3 years. Mirelle stood abruptly. I was not false. The Luna ring pulsed black. She cried out. Every eye turned toward her hand. Elara's expression remained calm. The ring has been rejecting you. No. Mirelle clawed at it. It shows Mo. No, Elara said. It marked you. The doors behind the council opened. Mirelle froze. Mara entered, holding Lyra's hand. Kale walked on her other side. Darius stopped breathing. The children stared at the hall with wide eyes. Kale had Darius's dark hair. Lyra had Elara's gaze. For the first time in 3 years, the Alpha King looked afraid. Not of an enemy, of being seen. "Elara," he whispered. She did not look at him. Lyra spotted the ring. "It's loud." Mirelle backed away. "What?" Lyra frowned. "The bad stone." Before anyone could stop her, she stepped closer. Mirelle jerked her hand back. "Keep her away from me." The hall reacted instantly. Adrian moved. Elara lifted one hand. "Lyra." The child stopped. Elara walked to her, crouched, and held out her palm. "You don't have to touch anything you don't want to." Lyra looked at the ring again, then chose to step forward. She pressed one finger against the moonstone. The effect was immediate. A crack split through the black surface. Mirelle screamed. The ring broke apart and fell to the floor. The dark veins beneath her skin began fading. A gasp swept through the hall. Then the royal stone behind the throne ignited silver. Lyra's shoulder mark glowed through her dress. Kale's collarbone answered with gold. The great hall fell silent. Marcus closed his eyes. One of the oldest council members whispered, "First Luna." Darius stared at the twins. "My children." Kale looked up at Elara. "Mama." She rested a hand on his shoulder. "You're safe." That was when Darius finally asked the question he had carried since finding the medical file. "Why didn't you tell me?" Elara looked at him. No tears, no anger, only the truth. "Because I needed to know whether you would choose their mother before you knew she carried your heirs." Darius's face collapsed. Elara finished quietly. "You didn't." The royal seal, resting beside the throne, flickered. Darius turned. Its gold light went out. He reached for it. Nothing. Again. Nothing. The presiding elder opened the first Luna Accord with shaking hands. A king who knowingly maintains a false Luna after confirmed oath corruption may lose crown legitimacy. Darius looked toward Elara. For the first time, he did not look like a king. He looked like a man standing inside the ruins of his own decisions. The royal seal slipped from his hand and struck the stone floor. For 3 years, Darius had believed Elara was the woman who walked away from his kingdom. Now, the kingdom itself was walking away from him. The royal seal remained dark. No one moved for several seconds. Then the oldest elder closed the first Luna Accord and rose. "Darius Blackthorn, until the council completes judgment, your authority as Alpha King is suspended." The words crossed the great hall without resistance. 3 years earlier, hundreds of wolves had watched Elara lose everything. Now, they watched Darius lose the crown. Mirelle stood near the council bench, her broken Luna ring scattered across the floor. Her title was stripped first, then her royal accounts were frozen. Every estate transferred to her through the forged coronation was seized. Elder Marcus and 3 council members who had participated in the bloodline conspiracy were placed under guard. Mirelle looked at Darius as the guards approached her. For one desperate moment, he almost expected her to reach for him. She did not. "I wanted the crown," she whispered. "I never promised to fall with you." Then she was taken away. Darius barely watched. His eyes remained on Elara. Kale stood close to her leg. Lyra held Mara's hand. Adrian remained nearby, silent. Darius descended the final step from the throne. "Elara," she waited. "I can fix this." "No." The answer was quiet. That made it final. His face tightened. "I know what I did. You know what it cost." He looked toward the twins. "They're mine too. By blood." The distinction landed hard. Darius swallowed. "Give me a chance." Elara's expression did not change. "You may earn the right to be known by them, if they want that one day." Hope appeared in his eyes. She ended it immediately. "But you will never earn me back." Darius stared at her. "No second mating? No forgiveness?" Elara paused. "I may stop carrying anger. That does not mean I return to the person who caused it." She took Kale's hand, then Lyra's, and walked out of the great hall. Adrian followed beside them. Darius remained beneath a throne that no longer recognized him. 5 years passed. First Haven territory grew around an old Greyhaven border settlement that Elara transformed into neutral sanctuary. Widows kept their property there. Children could not be claimed as political assets. Oathkeepers answered to written law instead of alpha preference. Elara became High Oathkeeper, Cale grew into a loud, stubborn boy who loved training yards. Lyra preferred archives and could identify oath seals before she could spell half their names. Adrian stayed. He never asked either child to call him father. That choice remained theirs. One autumn evening, Cale handed him a wooden sword. "Papa Adrian, you hold it wrong." Adrian stared at him. Elara stopped halfway through the doorway. Lyra rolled her eyes. "He always holds it wrong." Adrian laughed, but his eyes had gone bright. Elara said nothing. She did not need to. Far beyond First Haven, Darius's life had narrowed. After losing the crown bond, his wolf weakened. Old battle injuries stopped healing properly. Then came the tremors. Then the fever. He sold his horses. Then his townhouse. Then the final Blackthorn signet that still legally belonged to him. The healer, in the neutral city, examined his records. "There is treatment." Darius looked up. "How much?" The number made him go still. He had once spent more than that on a coronation banquet. Now he could not afford half. There must be another way. "There is." The healer closed the file. "Ask someone who can." 3 weeks later, Darius stood at the gates of First Haven. No guards. No royal coat. No alpha escort. Only a worn winter jacket and a cane he hated using. Elara received him in her office. She looked older, not diminished. Settled. Darius remained standing until his legs began to shake. "What do you need?" she asked. The words almost destroyed him. Once, he had decided what she deserved. Now he could barely look at her. "Money." Elara said nothing. "For treatment." His voice cracked. "I sold everything I could. Still nothing." Darius lowered himself to one knee. "Not as a king, as a sick man. I am asking you to help me live." Elara looked at him for a long moment. Then she took the medical estimate. She paid the clinic directly. Not a coin entered his hand. Darius looked at the authorization. "Why?" "Because your cruelty does not get to decide what kind of woman I become." He closed his eyes. "Elara, this is not forgiveness." She stood. "And it is not a door back into my life." Months later, treatment kept Darius alive. It did not restore what he had lost. One winter night, fever woke him in the small rented cottage outside neutral territory. He reached for a glass of water. His hand shook. The glass fell. It shattered across the floor. Darius stared toward the doorway. No footsteps came. No one asked if he was all right. Years earlier, Elara had sat beside his bed after battles, changing bandages before dawn. He had called it duty. Only now did he understand it had been love. That same night, a storm rolled across First Haven. Cale and Lyra climbed into Elara's bed complaining about thunder. Adrian arrived, carrying another blanket. "There is no room." Cale moved 2 inches. "There." Lyra laughed. Elara did too. The house was warm. No one mentioned Darius. Elara did not know that he was awake in a cold cottage, staring at broken glass. She had stopped looking backward years ago. Darius once believed betraying Elara would cost him one woman. He lived long enough to learn it had cost him an entire life. So, Elara's story closes here, not with revenge, and certainly not with her returning to the man who broke her trust. If you're still here with me, ask yourself one thing. What made Elara strong? It wasn't that betrayal didn't hurt. It did. She was carrying 2 children when the man she loved chose her own sister. She was humiliated, misunderstood, and forced to walk away from the future she thought was hers. But she didn't beg to be chosen. She chose herself. There are things in life we simply cannot control. We cannot force someone to be loyal, make them understand our worth, or stop them from making selfish choices. What we can control is what we do after they show us who they are. Elara protected her dignity, raised her children, built a new life, and refused to let Darius's betrayal turn her cruel. She even helped save his life, but she never confused kindness with giving someone another chance to hurt her. That distinction matters. And maybe the sweetest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's sleeping peacefully while someone else finally understands what they threw away. If Elara's choice speaks to you, leave one word in the comments: dignity. And if you enjoyed her journey, a like, share, or subscription would mean a lot. Thank you for staying with Elara all the way to the end. Dedict logo.